they told her she can stand down and she can leave. So we never heard from Lucy Ann Coleman.
But was there a stipulation of that she saw this Nazi flag and this and anything? Was there any kind of stipulation that they put into the record?
It's in the record in terms of the deposition that she gave prior.
Gotcha. Okay, right. So they submitted her deposition into the record.
Right. Now you can read that.
Yeah.
But I'm going to answer your other question because you asked about Furman's intimacy with Nicole. I think, didn't you hint at that?
Yes, I did. But this is a good time to take a break because, listen, you're doing so good. I'm at the edge of my seat here that we skipped the first commercial break. So we got to take a commercial break. But we are here with the fascinating T.H. Johnson. He's the author of, first of all, the movie producer of Serpents Rising, an independent investigation of the O.J. Simpson murder trial, and the author of A Pursuit of Exhibit 35 in the O.J. Simpson murder trial and its hidden secrets. We did 6 hours last time, okay? And then I did an hour with the singular, and we've just totally fleshed out the whole singular interview to such a point that I can't believe it. So we're going to be getting into more. We're going to get into the stuff by Nicole and try and get into some stuff by Geronimo Pratt, which is what I promised the audience the show was going to be about, but maybe we'll just retitle it, okay? But we'll be right back after these messages.
It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Welcome back to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, Private Investigator Ed Opperman. Tonight we have with us T.H. Johnson. We should call him Professor Johnson because the guy is just a fascinating expert on the O.J. Simpson trial. The movie producer of the video Serpents Rising, an independent investigation of the O.J. Simpson's murder trial, and also another book called Pursuit of Exhibit 35 in the O.J. Simpson murder trial and its hidden secrets. Now, Thomas, I'll give you a little background on this. You and I did our show, and then after that, I was doing a series of shows about the Atlanta child murders, and there was a woman who was doing a lot of research in that area as well. And when I mentioned I was having Stephen Singular on the show, and we were going to be talking about Mark Furman, she contacts me on Facebook, this woman, who I had known her previously through, her research in this other case, and she was a listener to the show. And she starts telling me, oh, I befriended Mark Furman on Facebook, and we became friendly. And she says, I believe that he had a relationship with Nicole. And then she also went on to say that he never got over it, and he had really, really extreme anger issues. So I was all excited. I brought her on the air. I tried to bring it up to Singular, and he didn't want to have it. But I think, like I said, I think he was in a really bad mood that night. I think just like you said, he had felt frustrated and beaten down and abused over that case, and he was steaming as he drove home because it was like a long drive, he told me, but it was like a 3-hour drive. And I bet he was steaming the whole way. And then when he did the show, he was just so frustrated. He kept saying, and no one knows the truth about this case, and I'm trying to tell everybody. So I tried to bring up the thing about Nicole, and he wasn't having it. Then she called in after the show, and she wouldn't come out with what she knew. She was afraid to talk about what Furman had told her. Now, what do you know about that?
Well, the only thing that I know is what I've read. And again, I go back to Lucy Ann Coleman's deposition. Okay. And in her deposition, she states that another detective had come into their office and had reported to another deputy DA who brought that detective to Lucy Ann Coleman and said, listen, this officer has something to tell you about Mark Furman as well. And according to this particular detective by the name of Maxwell, and I think he was an African-American detective, according to him, he had been at some type of police barbecue or something like that where Furman was bragging about having been close enough to examine the boob job. In other words, the medical breast job that had been done on Nicole.
Right.
And so that became part of the testimony in this particular deposition. But my friend Joseph Bosco, the late Joseph Bosco, who I had an opportunity to communicate with online a couple of times in a particular group. I think he had a blog site online, and we had communicated a couple of times before he passed away. But he has a very important book that I rate highly as well, called The Problem of Evidence, that came out. It was one of the first books that came out back, and I think his came out around either 1995 or early 96. And in his book, he also talks about this alleged intimate relationship that Mr. Furman had with Nicole Brown Simpson. So that's basically all that I know about it. I don't know anything other than that. And certainly if he did have that type of relationship, it certainly would have been a major factor and major concern relative to this whole matter, the credibility of this person related to this matter, But other than it's a fascinating subject, but they don't get that deep into it other than to say the allegations was that this guy was intimately close to Nicole Brown Simpson, and that that other officers used to razz him about it at a pub where they used to drink at from time to time, that something about your girlfriend, this or that, and Maxwell coming in to tell his part about Furman allegedly talking about how nice her breasts were after the boob job had been done, after the medical procedure had taken place. So I really can't tell you any more than that. I hadn't focused on it any more than that, other than, if he did have an intimate relationship with her, it certainly should be something that should be taken into consideration in terms of being a factor in this whole affair. But there are other wedges of this pie that should be taken into consideration as well.
Okay.
And, I think that maybe, I don't know if it's Singular's book or if it's Bosco's book, or, I've gone through so many of these at this point in time, but one of them that I had gone through tends to point to how sometimes these officers may overreach in terms of bridging the gap. If they consider someone to be guilty, they don't have the proof and the evidence to actually conclude that they're guilty, they may pad the books a little bit, So Furman may have been involved in that, and these others may have been involved in that. That's that particular issue. But as far as those that one should consider as being the murderer or involved in the murders of these individuals, that's an area of my concern, where this police department and Los Angeles District Attorney's Office just decided that they weren't going to do any further due diligence, that they were going to just simply stop and put the blame on O.J. Simpson. And I think part of that is related to the fact that they have these cases which they consider to be high-profile cases. And some of these attorneys compete like football players or rugby players out on the playing field, trying to get hold of the ball and run up the field. I'm going to get my hands on this case. And I think that this is the situation that occurred in this situation here. Because if you look at how Marcia Clark came into this case, under normal circumstances, she should never have been designated as the prosecutor in this case. Because if you read Joseph Bosco's book, he tells you that based upon his investigation, the Los Angeles District Attorney's Office has a setup. They have a hotline that if police officers at a crime scene are in need of a deputy district attorney to be out at that crime scene, there's a hotline for them to call. And there are designated DAs that are scheduled to be on duty to deal with that hotline on that particular occasion. Marcia Clark was not on that hotline. Marcia Clark got her call directly from Phil Van Adder the morning that he arrived at the murder site. He called her directly at his house and told her, I got a hot one over here. You need to get dressed and come on over here. And so that's why I think that she became so protective of that case, even though she didn't have all of the evidence, even though Lucianne Coleman was telling her, you need to go slow on this situation in embracing Mark Furman. She was determined to go straight ahead. So all of what that would lead to as far as our investigation was concerned is later on up the line when we started finding irregularities related to evidence that supposedly came into the Simpson case, but did not come in a direct manner, but came in indirectly by stipulation, by lawyers agreeing behind closed doors. This is what we will say. And if we stipulate to this will allow this evidence to circumvent the examination of the jury or the triers of fact. And on the 14th day of the actual criminal trial is where you hear that stipulation come in regard to one of the most crucial pieces of evidence in this case.
What's that?
Exhibit 35.
The phone records.
The Brown phone records. And on that particular day, when the prosecution, Marcia Clark, puts up this graphic poster board that has at the bottom of it this 937 phone call, you will see Robert Shapiro stand up and in an inaudible tone say, since this witness, since we don't believe that this witness, Karen Crawford, who was employee at the Messaluna restaurant, can attest to the accuracy of this telephone time, we will stipulate that phone time represents the actual time that the phone call came in. Okay? Now, that's what he did on February 7th. But what most people don't know is that 8 months earlier, on July 8th in 1994, in the closed chambers of Judge Kathleen Kennedy Powell, on the last day of the preliminary hearing at 12:05 in the afternoon, Robert Shapiro was offering another stipulation because she asked him, we're ending today. Is there anything that the defense, is there anything else that you'd like to offer? And he says, no, there's nothing else that we'd like to offer, but I would like to offer a stipulation that final telephone call came in at 10:17 p.m. Okay? So now that's 2 times that Shapiro has spoken about the telephone time. The original time that was stated was 11 p.m., and that was stated to Detective Lang at 7 o'clock in the morning when he called Lou Brown and them at their home in Dana Point. And he asked them, when was the last time that you knew your daughter to be alive? And Lou Brown said on the 13th that morning, about 10 hours after these murders took place, or whenever they took place that night, the night before. He says, my daughter was